We have an unusual circumstance, having originally produced a preview for the Arena Racing Northern Flats just a few hours ago. We're now faced with a situation whereby one of the leading fancies, or I believe, Antipode's favourite 10-pin, has been withdrawn from the first heat over a seeding issue. I believe that David Mullins was unhappy that the dog was drawn on the outside of King Bruno, who's drawn in trap 3, who's previously been seeded as a middle seed. As a result, we are going to be editing this piece into the original piece, which is obviously now null and void. I'd like to kick off in the first instance by asking Paul Lawrence. Paul, you're an ex-racing manager of many, many years particularly I'm thinking of Crayford, one of the most difficult places surely to grade dogs. What's your take on this as far as David withdrawing the dog?
Well, like most arguments, Floyd, there's two sides to every story, and I suppose we're looking at in the first instance at David's displeasure with the fact that he's got a tricky draw for a greyhound. Actually, I mean we've gone through a lot of the heats already, and even Joe's pulled out an instance where he thought a dog was Cedar Rails, and in a later heat, and thought it probably should have been middle. There are rails dogs, proper rails dogs, such as Havana Class for Rab Indeed, who desperately wants trap 1. 10-pin could go into that kind of trap 1 or 2 scenario, but there's a lot of dogs that are middle to rails that probably could easily be seeded middle. They could easily be seeded rails, but in the context of certain greyhounds where they're desperate for the rails and you end up with trap 4, I can understand David being really peeved, and of course he's looking out for the owners as well. So I don't really know where I stand on this. I've got to tell you the truth, because I know David Mullins very well, and obviously I know Rab and Liz quite well, but I know David really well. And when you care about your dogs and you end up looking at what trap draws you've been given, and he was drawn 5, I seem to remember, at Central Park one evening, and sometimes you have to deal with it. But again, I suppose you end up a little bit getting the zig with it when you see a dog that is a middle dog that gets drawn as a railer, but is in 3. So in the case of King Bruno's draw, it's probably okay. But in the case of 10-pin being drawn on the outside, and this is why we have rails middle and wide, to try and get them in reasonable decent boxes for them to operate from, so we're going to not have so much trouble. But I think sometimes you get dogs that can move off at the start, and then they can steer a middle course or a middle to rails course even. There's all sorts of different idiosyncrasies with greyhounds, and I think that sometimes racing managers don't pay enough attention to looking at where dogs run in the lines, and there can be some very, very lazy rails middle and wide comments sometimes, just because they're in the boxes that they are, without taking that real consideration. And I think as well, with the advent now of the videos, we even have video for trials, Floyd. So therefore, there's no real excuse to make terrible mistakes with seeding. So in this instance, you look at it and you say, well, King Bruno basically is a middle runner. He's not a railer. He is a middle runner. But I do understand, again, from Rab and Liz's point of view, from the KSS syndicate, then they're not idiots. They think, well, we don't want to keep getting stuck out in 5 because he wants to be in trap 3, and he's probably got a decent enough draw. But it is this kind of, it gets down the road of tactical seeding. And of course, that then impacts on a dog like 10-pin that really does want to be in trap 1 or 2.
Joe, when we spoke previously, I put it to you that should the seeding of the dogs be taken out of trainers' hands, or at least to a point where if they want to change a seeding, it should be mandatory that a dog has to trial. If you'd like to expand on what you, as we spoke previously.
Yeah, if you can justify to a racing office that your dog wants to be seeded rails, then prove it. And if that means that you have to go for a trial a week before, then so be it. You've got to go for a trial and prove that your dog wants 1 or 2. If I'm in Ice on Fire's camp, I'm going, we've got a lovely draw here, by the way, because we've got a dog in 3 who's going to be edging off. We've got a dog in 4 who's going to be coming in. We've got a lovely run to the bend. I know there's more important things than that. Of course there is. And the most important thing is the safety and welfare of these dogs. And I can fully understand why David's pulled his dog out. You know, we watched King Bruno last week and he come out of 5 and he absolutely ripped to the bend out of 5. And all his comments beforehand, you know, even in his last 5 runs, as wide, middle always led, middle to wide, going back a few runs, middle to wide ran on, middle to wide always led, early pace wide. Behind Tempin at Monmore, he was in trap 6 twice against Tempin at Monmore. How he's found himself in trap 3 is absolutely staggering here. To be perfectly honest, it's baffling. And you know, I've gone on about King Bruno, and I also said the same about Paradise Prince in heat 2. You know, there's no way you could seed that dog rail, and he's found himself in trap 1. Havana Class should be in 1 in that, and well, or you know, you can't say he should be in 1. It's a trap draw, so you'd be kind of concerned with Havana Class's draw. He's drawn outside 2 middle dogs. Look, I'm gutted the dog's not running tomorrow, because it would have been an absolute fantastic race to watch. As we've mentioned in the previous preview, the return of a superstar Ice on Fire against England's leading hope at the minute. So unfortunately, we won't get that. But again, lastly, I fully respect what David's done. He's put the dog first, and now hopefully he can have a good preparation for the Derby. I'd imagine it's only 4 weeks away, if that. So hopefully he can have a good prep for the Derby now, and hopefully we see the match up again at Toaster. Maybe I think that's what we'll all be wanting to see.
Moving on to the second heat, Paul, do you want to kick us off? A certain Havana Class in there.
Yeah, I mean, this is a dog we spoke about in the Perry Bar Laurels, and a dog that I really like because he's another greyhound with completely an awesome early pace, and Rab and Liz have got him absolutely firing. Now, the negative here is that he really does want to be drawn inside, but he pinged out of 2 the other day and flew to the turn. Again, he can brush a dog, but he's now a greyhound that he's a July 19 puppy, but he's also learning that you can get a little bit of a knock, but it doesn't really phase him too much. So although I'm not really that happy with him, I do expect him to reasonably outstart both Paradise Prince and Hope's doggy on the inside, and I think he'll claim the rails and he'll fly, and then we'll all be watching the clock, because this dog can run. There's no danger of that. Havana Class is a really, really exciting dog, and he deserves to be at the top end of the anti-post market. Interesting runner has got to be Tom Helbron's Jamara Liberty. In essence, got a reasonable draw. She probably moved between lane 3 and 4. She's 14 weeks out of season now, so she could be spot on. She won in a 28.41 as well on January the 26th, I think, literally when she came in season. So I think she'll be an interesting runner. Adrella Jim's Tom's other dog. He looks like he's gone a bit quirky actually, but again, he's got lots of speed, and it's a bit of a tricky draw where he is in 5. And I think really, all things being equal, Havana Class start, lead and win, and hopefully doesn't do too much damage to the red and the blue.
Joe, do you have any thoughts?
The first thing I thought was how Paradise Prince has been accepted as a rails is beyond words for me. He's done all his running probably from 3, 4, 5, 6. He's never once had a rails comment on the card. And to seed in rails anyway, look, I don't want to put any negativity on it, but there's been a lot of talk recently about seedings and stuff, and that'll carry on coming into the Derby. And it's beyond me how they've accepted this as a railer, as a racing office as well. There's no way that this dog wants to be a railer, and the case could be said for 2, but more for Paradise Prince. And whether it's maybe because he does lack a yard of early to the corner, and then they're trying to get him around the bend and qualify, I don't know. But yeah, that's just a little gripe that I first noticed in this race. But yeah, it'd be Havana Class for me. He is pure class, and you know, he's a Laurels winner, and he had to work hard to win that Laurels because there were some strong dogs in behind, and he did really have to get his head down and work hard. And it was an impressive winner. I know we were in the race, obviously, with Candyman, and it was a really decent final, to be fair. So I think he was about 2.4 on Betfair last week in his race, and that was Christmas coming 8 months early for me. I'm sorry, it was more like an A1.5, A2. He was in the puppy race, and he done it really well. And I can't believe the price he went off. And yeah, he deserves to be at the top of the market. He's a really nice pup going the right way. As Paul said, he's getting better with every run he has, and he's been faultless, to be fair, so far. And yeah, I can't look past 3. I know what I've said, 1 and 2 probably be more middle, but if this dog pops out, he'll have no issues clearing 1 and 2. And I had it exactly the same as Paul. I made 4 the Danger, Jamariah Liberty. She's a nice bitch who's lightly raced, so Connections will just wanted to qualify. The trial to Denmark's good. We know how strong Denmark is, and it's a decent trial to hold him off. I think he's at Sheffield in a 3 steps competition tomorrow. So yeah, it's a good run in. And like Paul says about 5, he doesn't seem to run a Ben 5, and he gives himself a lot to do. Adderella Jim. So yeah, it'd be 3 for me to show his class, and if he pops out, I think he'll make all. Yeah, I'd fancy 3.
Funny, I was talking to Rab about Havana Class, and he was saying that, you know, he thinks he has as much early as King Elvis, but it's a better trapper. And you know, if ever a man would not be sort of denigrating a dog, it would be Rab talking about King Elvis. But that's how highly he thinks of him, that he would probably lead King Elvis, and that takes some doing. And of course, you know, the 4:47 split time, which when I went back and checked on Ice on Fire, I think his fastest ever was 4:44, and that was, I think, twice in about, I don't know, a dozen races or trials or whatever. So it was an exceptional time, and of course that was first look at the track, so you know, particularly good. Joe, do you want to lead us into Heat 3?
Yeah, it's wide open this, and I'll go with the dog who's in the best form at the minute, and for me that's trap 4, Frankie's Jet. He was an impressive winner of a trial stakes last week, and he gets first run on 5 and 6 for me here. So, and I'd fancy him to catch the early pace types in 2 and 3, and you know, one Nadora Dutch is very fast, but there's obviously been issues there. He's had massive breaks off in between race and trials, but he's flew around in 16.79 and 28.53. Which is it's rapid, to be fair. The sectional was good as well, 4:57. But I'd go for 4, Frankie's Jet, who was an impressive winner last week for me. He's been a dog who he always seems to run well, and probably hasn't won as many races as he should have, to be fair. He's a big strapping brindle dog for Gary Ferguson, and I think if he can follow the early pace types round in 2 and 3, I'd fancy Frankie's Jet, and I'd make 6 Droopy's back up the biggest danger. I think he'll get first run on 5. Like for Dodd, and he done it well in A1 last week, and he's changed his running style a little bit. This dog, he used to be crack out early pace dog when he first come on, but again, he's fairly lightly raced, and he's doing it coming from behind now. And as I've said, I think he'll get first run on 5 and 4 to take it up by halfway, and then 6 to run on for second.
Yes, the race has a little bit of a look of a Shawfield Newcastle Intertrack, doesn't it? Particularly with Nadora Dutch. I do wonder about John McLaughlin, who's I've spoken to him a couple of times. Seems a really nice guy. I guess it's one of those, how many opportunities have they had with the dog? I mean, you're looking at his age now, and he's only got 20 races on his card. It's must be just very tough to keep getting races for these dogs if you're based in Scotland. Paul, do you have a view on it?
Yeah, I actually went for Nadura Dutch. I just thought that, I mean, Joe's probably touched on he could be a little bit fragile, you know, and you might be right in that there's limited opportunities, but obviously there's a lot of tries. He hasn't raced actually since July here at Newcastle last year, so I just thought he had a decent makeup here, because I thought if he got any kind of start, he could lead this race, and I thought if he led, he'd win. He always seems to find kind of trouble spots in decent races at Newcastle. I just thought this was quite a weak heat 3. I did make Frankie's Jet the other runner, and again I agree with Joe in that Droopy's backup's the other half a runner, but I made Nadura Dutch slight favourite in front of Frankie's Jet, so I've got to go with the red. I was 1 on top of 4, and as I say, just maybe 6. If he did get any kind of start, he might get in the race, but he's kind of putting himself on the back foot by the slow starts and then running on late. And by which time I think the race could be over. So Nadura Dutch from here.
Excellent. Moving on to the 4th heat. I think looking at the anti-post, I think Pacemaker Teddy's probably the shortest price of anything in here. Do you concur?
Yeah, I made Pacemaker Ted quite a short price favourite here. Really good makeup, and again, Joe and I were were kind of analysing his chances throughout his Laurels bid at Perry Bar. I just think he likes Newcastle better, and I think he's trapping better at Newcastle for Tom Helbron. And he's got early pace. He's flying down the back straight. And I think if he gets any kind of start here, he'll lead this race. Derby's Ranger used to be trained by Kevin Boons, now with Carl Jackson. That'll be moving into lane 3. Got a bit of pace. I don't think Glengale Gav is the same dog that he was when he was flying at Nottingham last year. Looks like Power is getting a little bit long in the tooth, but did run close to Pacemaker Ted when they met earlier in March. But a tricky draw because he'll move in a little bit. The interesting runner has got to be Save Me Paddy here, Floyd, because again, Gary Ferguson seems to get hold of some decent dogs, and this dog won an A1 at Shelbourne. No flashy time, 28.97, but certainly got some kind of a squeeze if he pops out. I thought Gart Kloss Dakota was up against it, a bit one paced on the rails, will keep going in the closing stages. But all things being equal, if the trap's open and you see the stripes flash out, I think Pacemaker Ted will lead and win.
Excellent. And Joe, what was your thought?
Yeah, I thought in terms of what prices will be, I thought this was the best bet of the first round, to be fair. Pacemaker Ted, he's really well drawn. He'll have the legs of 5, Derby's Ranger to the corner, who, as Paul said, will be edging in from there. I think if he pops out, he can go around in front and he'll make call. I thought even if he led and he wouldn't be for catching, even if looked like Power managed to turn handy. I know he's a strong dog, but I'd still fancy 6 to win. He loves Newcastle and I think he'll win. 3 looked like Power running well in stays, but he'll have his work cut out to get across 2, as Paul says. Save Me Paddy, who's trialled in well. The 463 sectional was decent, and he's in 16.90 as well, which is not a bad run at all for the sprint. So yeah, I made 6 a good thing and was probably my best bet of the first round, to be fair.
What price are you looking for?
I think he'll be short. I think he'll be about a 5 to 4, 6 to 4 chance, and if I manage to get 6 to 4, I think I'll try and snap it up. I think he's a really good bet. Yeah.
Yeah, I made him even, so I tissued him up at even. So that I'd be the same as Joe. They're exactly the same. If you're 6 to 4, I'll be betting him.
Joe, do you want to move us on into the fifth heat, which again I think we've got quite a few of the bigger price dogs in this one. It's not too many of the well fancied ones.
Yeah, it's quite open, and I'll go for 3. Mingler's Popeye. He was absolutely desperate to get across from 5 on his British debut a couple of weeks ago. He's a classy type who he reached a Gold Cup final at Shelbourne in February. And I think if he can come away, he's got a decent little draw here. I think he'll have the legs of 1 and 2 to the corner. Who, to be fair, will both be going up okay, but I'd still fancy 3 Mingler's Popeye to come on for the run. And the trial was okay last week, 28.71 off a really quick 4.54 sectional. And as I said, the draw looks a lot better here for Mingler's Popeye, and I think he can make all here. I only had it between 1, 2, and 3. I couldn't fancy 4, 5, or 6 at all. And I thought the winner was definitely coming out of 1, 2, and 3. I think that'll be first, second, and third. And yeah, I'll go for Mingler's Popeye to pop out and make all and come on for the trial. I think 28.60 would probably win the race. And I think he can find a little bit for his trial last week. I think he's more than capable of doing that. So yeah, but Mingler's Popeye for me, and then probably 1 second, 2 third.
Paul?
Yeah, I was 3 just on top of 2 here. I was Mingler's Popeye. I thought Killian Phantom could actually lead this race and would be a runner on the leadability factor. But I do fancy that Mingler's Popeye could actually turn behind Killian Phantom and maybe pick up Bobby Thompson's dog in the closing stages. Glory Clara's got a bit of earlier. Again, might be running in snatches a little bit these days. I remember Lorraine I think she was on Racing Post TV one night, and she fancied this dog quite strongly in a 5.75 when Kevin Boom had him, and kind of showed flashes of ability without actually. I think he's won 1 from 9 so far in his British career. So definitely got pace. I fancy that Killy Phantom could lead Glory Clara, but I do feel that Mingler's Popeye could turn in behind, and a decent class dog, as Joe says, from the Shelbourne runs. 4 and 6 have got little chance. Interesting runner, probably Baron's Court. Won a double AO race in Newbridge, but that was banging out of trap 2, and so it's got a tricky draw. I'm not too sure how wide this dog wants to be. Probably 3 would be most outside box for Barons Court. So ended up with a pretty tricky draw here. So I fancy it could be a bit of a match. It could be a bit of a race between 2 and 3. Might be a very good finish.
Excellent. And then moving on to the final heat, which I think is possibly the second best heat, or has to be the second best heat, or the second most interesting heat of the 6. Paul, what Betty's Book, Jaguar Macy?
Yeah, I fancy Jaguar Macy leading Betty's Book, but Kevin took Betty's Book to Nottingham, and obviously I was closely following Betty's Book, and she kind of walks out, I think, the first time she ran, and then all of a sudden she started really breaking well, and she was putting in some really good clocks. And then she went to Toaster, and she's missed the break a couple of times, and she's got no look here. I basically think she's a stayer, and I think she'll probably get a little bit further in time. But she's got plenty of quality about her. If she got any kind of start and got in the race, then she would be a danger. But I really fancy that Jaguar Macy, another greyhound that really likes Newcastle. She's got nice early speed. She could dominate this race. And I would say if that happens, then you're going to look where Betty's Book turns. But I actually think that the second in here should be Hardy Rebel. I think this greyhound's going forwards quickly for Angela. Got some really good clocks as well, 28.47, 28.52 at Newcastle. I really do think that Hardy Rebel has got some kind of a squeeze to get the final. I think Anti-Post 40-1 is a massive, massive price.
That's interesting. Joe, just before I'm going to ask you about the race, would there be an argument that say this is possibly one of the poorest, well, certainly of the last sort of 6 or 7 races, overall one of the lower class fields that Jaguar Macy's actually contested? She was in the juvenile, and before that at Monmouth.
Potentially, but she's still got to do it right. You know, as Paul said, Betty's Book. I know the last 2 runs haven't been what Kevin would have been hoping for, but she's been in with top class, to be fair. And yeah, I'll back Betty's Book. The second ever race at Nottingham in what was a really, really weak like maiden or puppy race, and she ran really flat. And to be fair, I never saw this coming. What she's been doing recently, she's took to Nottingham like a duck to water, and you know the juvenile run, she just completely got it wrong at the start, and the race was run then. But yeah, I'd fancy Jaguar Macy still, as PR said. I think she'll get first run on 1, and if she does, she can show her class. She's the right side of 3. Pinpoint Villa, who flatters to deceive for me in races. He trials really well, and you know it took him 475 meters nearly to get past the sprinter Arthur King last week when he turned very handy, to be fair. And yeah, he flatters to deceive in races for me. Pinpoint Villa. I couldn't fancy 4. I couldn't fancy 6, and exactly the same as Paul. I made 5 Hardy Rebel, the danger here. He's found his feet for Angela Harrison. It took him a little bit of time, but for the last 6 weeks, he's been relentless for Angela and the team, and he's doing it really well. I know he got beat by Pacemaker Ted, which is no disgrace at all, and he'd be one of my Anti-Post pets, Pacemaker Ted. So yeah, he's doing it really well, and like Paul says, 40-1 looks a really decent price for a dog who's got really good early and would have no issues clearing 4 and 6. I think he'd get a nice run here, Hardy Rebel. But I fancy Jaguar Macy still. I think if she turned behind 5, she'd catch it. 5 would be hoping for a little bit of trouble maybe in behind. I think she could show her class here. It'd be 2 over 5 and 1 for me.
So, gentlemen, moving on, just dragged an Anti-Post list together, which I should hopefully be able to share with you. And let's have a quick look. We can see it, yeah? Yeah, are we in? Okay. So I was going to do a little bit of a sort of gameplay with you. I said, right, going to give you an imaginary 3 bets, a fiver, a score, and 100 quid. Where's your fiver?
You go first, Paul.
I've dropped you straight in on this. I didn't give you any warning that I was going to do this, but your fiver Anti-Post.
Oh, let's have a look. My fiver would be, I know you've got prices there. I've seen different prices elsewhere.
Yeah.
My fiver would be Mingler's Popeye. I've seen 40-1.
Yeah,
with Ladbrokes.
Yeah, I just see that.
So my fiver would be Mingler's Popeye. My score would be. No, you're killing me here, Floyd. My score would be Frankie's Jet, who I think has got a. I think he'll definitely qualify, and he's strong enough. So that'd be my score. And my £100, I'm going to take the top 4 on, and I'm going to stick me £100 at Pacemaker Ted, who is also 12-1 with Ladbroke. So it'd be £100 Pacemaker Ted, £20 on Frankie's Jet, and my £5 on, where is it? Mingler's Popeye, 40-1 elsewhere.
Excellent, excellent. I've got you both in it. Paul and Pete.
Right. My £5 would be Killia Phantom. Because I think he's got a bit of early and can qualify from the first round. My score would be Mingler's Popeye. And I'll definitely get bigger than 25s, by the way. And my 100 would have to be Hardy Rebel, because I love a bit of value.
Gentlemen, thank you for that. Hopefully we will get to speak again after the first round, yeah?
Let's hope so.